All right, Sia, I've said it many times. Your favorite movies when you were 13 or 14 end up being your favorite movies for life. Night Shift, 1982. Michael Keaton comes out of nowhere. It is one of the more memorable. We have a new star out of nowhere performances. He was also going on Letterman all the time in the early 80s and was a Mount Rushmore Letterman guest. And CR, he was 31 when this movie happened, probably 4 or 5 years late. It's almost like one of those QBs that they don't become a starter till they're 25 and then they're awesome. And from this moment on, I had Keaton season tickets. Got a little rough a couple times in the 80s.
Sure.
Lot of vindication with Batman and Beetlejuice and Pacific Heights, but he's still in our lives 4+ decades later. Night Shift, what does it mean to you? Because you weren't born yet. Or you were born, you weren't going to movies yet.
I wasn't going to movies. This goes firmly into the category of 80s films that I adore so much because it actually captures a couple of different themes I love from early 80s movies. A, square guy getting hip. B, crazy nights in the city.
Yeah.
C, hey, why don't we start an illicit business together? And D, like Breaking Bad and learning from it. I love all of the like little things here, and that goes... See, this basically kicks off Risky Business, Revenge of the Nerds, After Hours, like all of these, like Dr. Detroit, you could go back and be like, oh, look at this, like nerd square guy gets radicalized by a cool guy and winds up partying for the whole thing. But Keaton, man, the Keaton thing, I saw somebody wrote this online. I can't remember where, but I thought it was the perfect thing. It's like, this is the closest thing there is. Keaton walking on screen and after in Night Shift is the closest thing we have to Eddie Murphy in the bar in 48 Hours, where it's like that kind of debut. It's like, oh my God.
But the debut in 48 Hours was him in prison singing Roxanne. Nick Nolte goes to visit him. In this movie, it's you just hear somebody humming Jumpin' Jack Flash and then just comes in and blows the doors out of the office. I wrote down, I was going to do this as a hottest take, and then I decided it wasn't a hot take. It's a properly baked, nice and cool, ready to eat take. Reggie Hammond, Billy Blazejowski, and Brian Flanagan are the 3 funniest movie characters of the 80s. And Brian Flanagan in Cocktail wasn't necessarily intentional.
Unintentional,
but has brought me the most joy, as we covered when we did the Cocktail Pod. But those are the 3 that stand out. And I'm sure other people, what about this? What about that? What about that? Reggie Hammond and Billy Blaze, 2 iconic, this person's going to be in my life for the rest of my life performances from, we knew we had a history with Eddie Murphy. Michael Keaton was bouncing around. He was a stand-up comic. He was on the Mary Tyler Moore variety show. This year, he does a Letterman guest spot, which I watched, which is great. I would highly encourage people to go on YouTube and watch it. He comes and he does this whole Bazooka Joe stand-up comedy piece. He's just sitting on the couch with Letterman, but Letterman's like, you're filming a movie right now in New York. It's like, oh yeah, I'm filming this movie called Night Shift. But he was there to promote, I think, this TV series where he's like a parole officer. It was a comedy. It lasted 6 episodes. I don't even remember it, but this guy was getting a lot of chomps at the apple. And this would happen back then because we only had 3 TV channels. We're only making 100 movies a year. And these guys could fall through the cracks for 5, 6, 7 years. Then it finally happened.
31's not nothing. And he definitely, when he walks on the screen, you're like, this is like Last Chance Saloon almost for this guy. Right. So he comes on and he's just like, I have to make such an impression on people in that first scene. And I don't know how much of it was scripted. I mean, you can tell part of this movie, I mean, most of the, this movie was written by Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel, who did a lot of like stuff over the next 20 years. And I was made fun of for citing them during City Slickers, but are really, really accomplished comedy screenwriters and really were very successful for the 80s and 90s. But I don't know how much they could have scripted Billy Blaze. Like, so much of that is coming from his just like almost nuclear power that he has inside of him, and it's such an amazing like grabbing of the mantle. Like he's like, I'm not going to let this opportunity pass me by, even though this movie is basically like a Roger Corman movie with a little bit of a Neil Simon play added onto it. It's essentially supposed to be a trashy B movie, but he makes it into this amazing experience.
Yeah, it's a top 10. I can't wait for producer Craig's opinion at the end of the podcast. I almost want to go to him now, but I'm fighting it off. You know, this happens with like Belushi in Animal House, and he comes in as Bluto, and he's one of the reasons that movie blows up. But he completely steals the movie and we knew him. He was on SNL for, I think, 3 years before that movie, but comes in force of nature, and you're just like, wow, this guy's a movie star. It's a really rare thing, and it doesn't happen in the same way anymore because I feel like we have so much history with. It's really hard to just kind of come out of nowhere and be a comedy phenomenon.
Well,
right?
It's especially rare, I think, also for it to be a situation where they allow the supporting character to take over the movie like that, right?
Yeah, true.
Like, because if you get a comedy made now, it's usually because it's built around Will Ferrell or it's built around whoever, and they're not going to let like the third guy or the second guy blow, because he blows Winkler off the screen. With all due respect to Henry Winkler,
yeah. But Henry Winkler's fine with it.
Yeah, he's good in the movie, but it's just like Henry Winkler versus like a tornado hitting the building, and it's so I don't think that they really allow that kind of stuff to happen as much anymore.
Well, it happened. Vince Vaughn and Swingers definitely happened.
Yeah,
McConaughey and Dazed and Confused to some degree. So it's every time he was in, he kind of owned the scene. This was different though. And this was, it was a combination of what's next for this guy. Cause I now believe he can do anything, but also like, why did this take so long? And for me, it was, his next couple movies, he did Mr. Mom, he did Johnny Dangerously, and he did Gung Ho.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically went 2.5 for 3. I kind of like Johnny Dangerously, and he was doing the Letterman appearances. He had a little bit of a rough mid-'80s, but then Beetlejuice followed by getting picked for Batman. When he got picked for Batman, that was, it was just stupefying. It was like, what?
Yeah,
it's gonna be Michael Keaton, the super funny guy, because he was in the running probably for him and Eddie as the funniest comic actors of the 80s.
It's very rare that we see anything like that today. Like the closest thing I could think of was something like Chris Pratt, where he's like on Parks and Rec and is funny and then gets shredded and is in Guardians of the Galaxy. But you don't really see people make that crossover as easily anymore.
Yeah, I was trying to think like if Shane Gillis became Batman, people would be like, wait, Shane Gillis is Batman? That's insane. That's honestly how I felt about Michael Keaton. It's like Michael Keaton's like, that was the Adam West character on the TV shows. They're gonna have Michael Keaton as Batman? That like broke your brain, but he did a good job. And then, he did 2 Batman movies. And we've talked about him a bunch. He has this whole second career when he's in that Jackie Brown supporting character era. Then he has a real comeback in the beginning of the 2010s with Birdman, Spotlight, the McDonald's movie, and he's had an amazing career. We're talking almost a 50-year career at this point.
Yeah, he stays busy. I think he's in Beetlejuice now or soon. He's done some prestige TV stuff. So like he's kind of all over the place. He kind of has a career sort of like Jeff Bridges or Jeff Daniels has had, where done a lot of different kinds of stuff and is now settled into, all those guys have done a lot of like hour-long dramas. But it's like, it's so interesting to think about this movie kicking off the 80s, and like he's just older than Cruise and Hanks, right? Like he's a little bit older than those guys.
He's in a bloodbath with Hanks for the 80s, and he's basically winning at the end of the decade. He's having a more successful career.
And then Hanks has the 90s. He has. Yeah.
But he's ahead of the 90s.
Almost all of those Hanks roles, like in the 90s, you can kind of imagine Keaton playing, right?
Oh, you could have flipped. I don't think he could have been as funny as Keaton in this movie, but he also does his version of it in Bachelor Party, which is basically
what's the stand-up movie he does? What's the stand-up movie
the Punchline?
Yeah, I mean
Sally Field. Yeah, Keaton could have been that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, probably would have been better in that movie. In general, one more thing on him. So I'm watching this last night, and my wife, I have tennis on a smaller TV so she can monitor the tennis, and she's like on doing emails and just kind of farting around, having a glass of wine, and she's seen the movie, so she wasn't really watching, but she was sitting next to me, she was doing stuff, and I'm just laughing, and I don't really laugh that much when I watch movies. I'm definitely like a silent, oh, that was funny. And with Billy Blaze, like, I'm just laughing throughout the movie. And she's just like, this movie, what is it about this movie? It just makes you laugh. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's been working for 42 years. Billy Blaze, a radical, like just like his energy. The limo scene, we're going to go through some of the rewatchable stuff, but the limo scene when he's like, watch this, and he rolls the windows up, he's like, yeah, we got teenage girls, we got broads. And he's like taunting the cops. Like, it just hit my funny bone as hard as you can hit it when I was 13. And it
yeah,
still
but
hits
he
it.
also does like all those like kind of subtle jokes, like when he first, I mean, I don't want to step on rewatchable scenes, but when he first meets Chuck, and there's this running bit of people looking at Chuck's fiance's picture.
Nice
and he's
frame.
like, nice frame. That's not like a big line reading. It's like really like an aside, but it's perfect.
He gets off like 30 sneaky one-liners that you have to have seen this movie a bunch of times to collect all of them.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about early 80s horn dog comedies. And
I have it right here.
Put me in the headspace of a 13-year-old boy, like as you're growing up, like at this time. And like, this is where you're getting a lot of like, I guess, illicit material, because like these horny comedies kind of ruled. And the whole thing around these movies, I remember, was like, how am I going to like, what angle can I find to see Porky's or to see Revenge of the Nerds or to see any of these movies on VHS or whatever? Like, I don't remember. I think they all came out in theaters before I even knew about them. But like in the second half of the 80s, these were like oh my God, my friend has Kentucky Fried Movie. We're going to watch it tonight. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's nudity in all of them. Yeah, it's the Sons of Animal House, right? So Animal House comes out and then that shapes the next 6 years. But there was the Losing Virginity vertical. So Shelley Long, who's in this movie, but was also in Losing It with Tom Cruise, which is about, I think they went to Mexico to try to lose their virginity. There was like the Porkies. I forget, what was Pee-wee had to lose his virginity. You had Class with Rob Lowe and Jacqueline Bisset. You Private School. So you had that whole genre, and you kind of, My Tutor, you kind of knew what those movies were. But then there's this other weird era that simultaneously this movie coincides with, the prostitute movie era, where we have in 2 years, 82 and 83 only, Night Shift, Trading Places, Risky Business, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which was a top 10 movie of 1982. You can look it up. And Dr. Detroit with Dan Aykroyd. But then you also had World According to Garp. The prostitute's a huge character in that movie. And it's just like this prostitute renaissance where these were huge parts for actresses for whatever reason, right? Jamie Lee Curtis had saved her career. Rebecca De Mornay had made hers. Shelley Long, we'll talk about her later, whether her performance worked in this movie. But I cannot understand, Chris.
It really did give me a somewhat skewed idea of sex work when I was a young man. Like, just like the kind I was like, man, these gals seem awesome.
Hookers with a heart of gold. It was the theory for literally forever.
Yeah.
In general, I had all this stuff for 82, which I just think is a bizarre and fascinating movie year because there's just this shift, right? Stallone, First Blood, Rocky III becomes the biggest star. Harrison Ford, Raiders and Blade Runner, same year. Now we have an A+++ lister. Spielberg does E.T. Now he's got the crown and he's involved in Raiders. Arnold comes out with Conan. So now we have Arnold in our lives with movies. Eddie Murphy, 48 Hours. Michael Keaton and Ron Howard, who directed Night Shift, they both start their career in 82. Robin Williams does Garp. That gets his movie career going. Sean Penn, Fast Times and Taps. Cruise is in Taps, leading to Risky Business the next year. And then we have Hanks and Costner, who's in this movie. We'll get to him. And Denzel are all working and they're on TV or in extra parts and looming. And movies, the rewatchables, the popcorn movies, are about to shift.
Yeah.
But we have no idea this is happening in 1982.
Yeah, and then there's also like this transition from 82 is actually this really fun time because it's not quite the grimy 70s new American cinema, like new Hollywood stuff, but we haven't quite gotten full Bruckheimered yet in the 80s. So it's this like weird in-between time where some of the movies have like 70s bones, but
like this one,
80s entertainment sensibilities. Like, and there's this mix.
This one, it has a couple scenes that have those 70 bones you're talking about, like the Christmas party. Like they actually make a real effort to have the characters connect with each other and not just go for the joke time after time after time, which Cheers launches the same year. That was one of the reasons I love Cheers so much. It was a comedy, but they would zag and just have serious sections. Sometimes they would have 3-4 minutes with no laughs. So you're right. It's like all the bones of the 70s, but we're about to move to this other era. And then 84 is when everything explodes.
Yeah, you
That's
can
when
feel like
popcorn
the
starts.
higher concept screenwriting, like the idea of being like, well, okay, like what if these guys who worked in a morgue, and I think Grazer found this in like a Times article or something like that, but it was like these guys were running a brothel out of a morgue. And it's like that kind of like, you're starting to just sort of like ramp up the like believability and the sort of excess a little bit, but it's not quite at, you know, what we would get in like 84, 85, 86.
Right. Well, we also have Henry Winkler in this movie.
Yep.
Cannot overstate what a giant star he was. He was the Fonz.
What would the equivalent now be, basically, of Ron Howard directing Henry Winkler in a movie right now?
You can't do it. I don't think there's a TV show that's as big as Happy Days was. These were the two biggest characters on the biggest show since
Jeremy
MASH.
Strong directing Kieran Culkin or something. I don't know.
Succession was 3 times more popular.
Yeah.
I don't really. I mean, the Fonz was, for whatever reason, the coolest guy of the 70s, even though the Fonz actually looked like Henry Winkler and how he looks in this movie.
Well, it's so funny.
An amazing optical illusion.
It's so funny to watch this now because most people probably like listening to this, the last experience they've had with Winkler is probably Barry.
Barry, oh yeah.
And, you know, to go back and try to imagine, and Chuck is not unlike the character he plays in Barry,
right?
But to go imagine like Henry Winkler being the coolest guy on television, and this going against the grain a little bit on that is fascinating.
He was by far the coolest guy on television. People had lunch boxes and posters, and they said Correctamundo and A. And I mean, it jumped the shark. Started on Happy Days when Fonzie water skied over sharks on an episode. He was a massive, massive, massive star, and Ron Howard was too. When Ron Howard left, which was probably this year, he left Happy Days to do Night Shift. He hosted SNL, and he was trying to break out. When he left Happy Days, it was like, you motherfucker. You're going to leave Happy Days, you shithead? Fuck you. Like, that was the attitude. It's like, what was his
Opie.
Richie Cunningham?
Yeah.
He was originally Opie.
Oh, Richie Cunningham, yeah.
Yeah. But Winkler said, I thought I'd play Richie Cunningham for once when he wanted to do this movie. His movie career never got going. He did this movie called Heroes, which was like a lost Vietnam movie, where I forget, there's a couple good people in it. I think Harrison Ford's in it.
Really?
Never made it. It's probably buried in the bowels of Pluto or Tubi. And then he did The One and Only, a Jimmy Kimmel favorite, where it's a Carl Reiner movie. Oh. I think he's a wrestler, and then that didn't hit either. And then he just stayed on Happy Days. And this was his last chance with movies. And Keaton became the breakout. And then I don't know what happened. He left Happy Days 2 years later, and that was it. There's really no other career that I can think of like his.
Yeah.
Where you become the biggest, most famous TV star, and it doesn't really translate into anything, but you're also one of the most beloved in Hollywood people. Like, people fucking love him.
Danson even had like a couple of big movies, right? Like, you know,
he led 3 different TV shows.
Yeah.
He had Curb, and he was in 3 Men and a Baby. Like, he had some hits. I think Henry Winkler and John Ritter seemed like they were the 2 most beloved TV stars in real life. Like, everybody just loved those guys. Anyway, he filmed this while he was shooting Happy Days on Thursdays and Fridays. He was filming it the other 3 days. And then the Shelley Long piece, this movie comes out in July, and Cheers launches 2 months later. Doesn't do that well first year, but was I obviously watched it because it was a Boston show, but it was an incredible show. And by the end of the year, started to get buzz. It was a little like what happened with Seinfeld, and then became the biggest show on TV. And she famously left after 5 years because she wanted to make movies, and became kind of a cautionary tale, a little like Caruso, like don't leave a good thing. But when you look back at the 80s, CR, she's on the biggest TV show of the 80s, Cheers.
Huge
She's the star of it for 5 years, right? She's in this movie. She's in Irreconcilable Differences, a movie that I absolutely love. That's a top 4 divorce movie, her and Ryan O'Neal. She's in The Money Pit with Hanks, which is beloved.
Yeah.
Outrageous Fortune and Troop Beverly Hills. She's in 5 like high-end movies and a giant TV show. She's a pretty big star. She also worked with Cruise, Hanks, and Keaton in a 5-year span. Who else did that?
I know, seriously. And she was taller than all of them, probably.
Yeah. I think I gotta, I'm 13, obviously developing crushes on everyone. I always had a sweet spot for her.
She's a different kind of star. Like she was not like, well, we can get into when we do casting what ifs. I'll be really interested to see what you say, but she's unique as Belinda in this movie. It's a really different kind of energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Diane Chambers was way more her thing. And Diane Chambers was the kind of girl I didn't want to have a crush on, but you kind of can't help it. That was like the whole idea of that character. But yeah, what's weird about her, and I'll spoil it when I do my casting couch for that one, but it's not a lot of people that do what she does, which she did for like 8-9 years, where it's like kind of cute, but super headstrong, really smart, quick-witted. That's not a long list.
Yeah, she kind of reminded me a little bit of like the kind of actresses that would be in, I mentioned this before, but like Neil Simon adaptations, like Marsha Mason.
Right, like a Jill Clayburgh, Marsha. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but then has like this kind of daffy pop appeal that I mean, obviously worked. Diane was a huge character. You know what I mean? Like
I told you this before and it wasn't a joke. I think Sam and Diane were like the first relationship I was ever invested in.
Right.
My parents got divorced, but other than that, like I was 12, 13, and there weren't relationships like that on TV or in movies that you had to go through the roller coaster ride. And it was like really wanting it to work. And then there were other ones and other shows figured out that formula, right?
Yeah.
But that one, the topsy-turvy up and down of that relationship, I hadn't really seen that on TV anymore. Ron Howard's first movie as director. He's done a few rewatchable movies at this point, and I would say
a few still to go.
I would say one of the most successful directors of the last of 80s, 90s, 2000s, so last 4.5 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Would you give him that?
Still working, yeah.
Top 5 or 6 most successful director, and then this was also his collaboration with Grazer. They did a bunch of stuff.
They sort of Imagine.
Grazer found the story, 1976. 2 city employees and a laborer were charged with operating a call girl ring out of a morgue. And he tried to get the movie made for years and then finally pulled it off and had your guys, Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel.
Yeah.
Are they both guys?
They're both guys.
Babalu's a guy, right?
Babalu and Lowell, both guys, yeah.
Yeah, you love story, you love craftsmanship. We talked about them during City Slickers.
It's like these guys and Bill Goldman. That's it.
Yeah. They banged it out. $8.1 million budget, made $21.1 million. Sadly, Raj was not impressed by this.
He was not.
He did not write anything. He was like, you know what? No byline for me on this. They did an at the movies. Thumbs down from Raj. Had the quote, "Do you really think prostitution is that funny?" It's like, whoa, Raj. Siskel, thumbs down as well, wrote about it, 2 stars, did say Keaton had a superb comic performance. Based on this one role, I have now paid to see Keaton in just about anything except Night Shift. Word searching.
When I read that, I was trying to think of other movies where I felt that way about a performance, where it's like, I was like, I would watch this person in anything but this piece of shit that I just saw him in.
Right.
I obviously don't think Night Shift is a piece of shit, but it's a pretty tough order to be like the best thing in a movie somebody doesn't like.
I was disappointed they didn't like it. I would have bet on them both doing 2 thumbs up because Keaton was so good. I think that in my head, I just thought they were going to gravitate to that and that the movie's really well done and well crafted, but no.
There's something about this movie that is like, I wonder if they were reacting to the fact that it's essentially a teenage movie, but with middle-aged guys. You know,
right.
Like it's essentially like a horny comedy and a big party, but with dudes with jobs. But in some ways, it kind of makes sense because we always talk about with these early 80s movies, we remember being kids and how much like free range we kind of had and like nobody's really watching you. So this movie has some of the same charm where you're like, nobody's checking on these guys on their late night shift while they're working.
There's no parents home.
Yeah.
First one, Billy's first scene. We talked about this a little bit earlier. So many good lines, including the nice frame, but we get to find out that he's an idea man.
Yeah.
I'm an idea man, Chuck. Like you, CR, you're an idea man.
That's why I carry the tape recorder.
I get ideas all day long. I can't fight them. Then he's like, watch this. Idea to eliminate garbage, edible paper. It's like, this guy's a lunatic. Take Takes him to the morgue. That guy's dead. It's just an electric 2.5 minutes. Jumping jack flash, the whole thing.
It's funny. We've worked together for 12 years now or whatever. And it's like, we've never had a Billy Blaze in the office really. You know, like a guy who's just like, oh, Billy's here. You know,
that's a miss. And I blame myself. I'm trying to think. Do those people, do Billy Blazes even exist in real life?
I think they get legislated pretty hard, but like, I think COVID took a lot from us. And one of them was like the Billy Blaze, like, wow, heat check guy in the office.
Yeah. I have some Billy Blaze cushions for later. Next one, his second scene, it tells a story about counting cards. And then the tuna fish, what if we feed him mayonnaise? Clint Howard shows up.
Yeah.
First of many Clint Howard, Ron Howard collaborations. And all of a sudden we realize
he's
Billy
running
Blaze
a second business. Yeah.
is now using the morgue's limos as actual limos. And we're off. Okay. Next rewatchable scene. Chuck's second run-in with the boss's son, which is my favorite part of the movie because we get the guy watching the Flintstones, which is like, to me, like it's, on a scale of 1 to 100 on the comedy scale, this is an absolute 100.
Yeah.
Boy, that Barney Rubble, what an actor. him just cackling at a Flintstones episode. It's so good.
I love that he's just like a Nepo baby for the big machine politics. So his uncle gets him a job. Yeah.
And then Bill comes in, does his Atlantic City story. Debar me. I'm out. Barred. And then that leads to Chuck snapping and doing the hello, this is Chuck, reminding Bill to shut up.
Yeah.
And then Keaton, I think it's been easy on me. I'm the new guy. I got no friends. The new guy. There's like 2 people.
I gave you $100. You didn't even thank me.
Next one is Love Brokers.
Yeah.
They're on the train. He's trying to talk him into it. Comes around behind the window. Love Brokers. And then we go right into the breakfast scene.
Love the breakfast scene.
Shelley Long breaks out the legs. She's actually like, this is not the Diane Chambers side of Shelley Long, and Henry Winkler's watching. And I don't know. That whole scene works. It's good. They build up some good tension with them. Winning over the prostitutes with the lecture. You want to take the floor here?
Honestly, the heavyweight belt. One of like the greatest like pitches, the greatest speeches in cinema history. The pan as the green chalkboard is there to Bill. He's like, "What are we talking about? Prostitution."
Pros. Can't use
we can
that.
say it. We're big kids.
I feel a lot of love in this room. So at this moment, I think it's important that I see off your breasts. He's just out of his mind. And then Henry Winkler comes in, saves the day. Please think of us as William and I as business associates. And we're off. And right away, we get the trying on clothes montage, which was an 80s staple. Do they have those anymore?
They do it ironically.
Trying on clothes. Yeah, it's all meta now, right? This was not meta back in the day. And you know you're getting Billy trying on some sort of pimpy outfit. But I love the 80s. This is like a specific yacht rocky kind of era.
Yeah.
Where it's, the girls don't lie to made about you. It's just going. I probably didn't do a good job on that. Next one. Costner's big scene.
The frat party.
Frat party on its own. I'm not sure it makes the cut, even though the Clint Howard and door number 12 having sex with somebody is kind of funny. And Michael Keaton's just, God only knows what he's doing in this scene. But
I feel like Scorsese ripped off some Wolf of Wall Street from this scene.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely, it's up there. They let me in the fraternity. But just Costner in the middle of this as frat boy number 1 out of nowhere.
While Keaton's trying to balance a Miller Lite on his forehead.
And if you were like, what are the odds somebody else in this scene is going to become a bigger star than Michael Keaton? Would have been like what, 1,000 to 1? So anyway, that happened. Billy's new car practically drives itself, Chuck. The middle finger through the tinted window. Jumpin' Jack Flash, which is a huge winner of this movie. And then he does the Operation Chuck. I love that part. I love the Christmas party. Michael Keaton getting a little serious. And this movie needs a couple of those moments. This is Chuck. Call your mom. And then Chuck confesses his love. This isn't as rewatchable, but it's a good scene. Belinda shows up for work the same night she hooked up with Chuck.
Yeah. It's good. He'll be like, what are you doing? Yeah.
And Keaton's like, get out of town, you two guys. But it has the I'm not a whore, no, you're a pimp. Lowell and Babalu just really crafting it.
They dial it up there, yeah.
Bill and Chuck in prison have that, and then Chuck tries to kill Bill in the lawyer's office. But not as much rewatchable stuff in the last 30 minutes. So what do you have? You have the prostitution speech?
The last 30 minutes gets pretty sad, except for Paradise Found. And I want to talk a lot about some of the health code violations going on there. But the number one rewatchable scene is obviously the chalkboard pitch. It's prostitution. You gonna go to the first Billy introduction?
I love Billy showing off his car. It's like 2 minutes. I think that's my favorite part of the movie. And I love the guy watching the Flintstones and then the prostitution scene third. So there you go. That is our most rewatchable scene. Oh, this is a fun category. What's the most 1982 thing about this movie?
I think it's the poster.
The poster. I had that in What Stage the Best. Unbelievable, like Jack Davis-y kind of poster.
It looks like a kind of National Lampoon's Rolling Stone cover, and it's like this cartoon of all of them like pouring out of a car, right?
Yeah, it's really good. I had some other ones. A hooker with a heart of gold. A theme song for the movie from Quarter Flash. The actual credit, original music by Burt Bacharach. You know you're in somewhere between 78 and 84.
What the hell is happening? Yeah.
Shelley Long's hair. I that was basically this movie in a year of Cheers, where that hair just, I guess, was a look, and now it's you would never see anyone with that haircut. Carrying a tape recorder around. Billy having a Rolodex on the dashboard of the limo.
Uh-huh.
My wife noticed that. And then the winner for me is Rubik's Cube. Chuck's doing Rubik's Cube.
And he has a guide to how to beat your Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, that was like the most so rooted in 1982. What Stage the Best? You mentioned the poster. One of the things I love about this movie is how Chuck is under attack the whole time for the first like 80%. The dog keeps coming after him.
Yeah.
People on the subway, he almost gets trampled. His girlfriend is just awful. The delivery guy is always fucking with him. Mr. Carbone, you gonna go over my head? You gonna go over my head? The schoolgirls attack him. The guy leaving an apartment building shoves him. Like and you just know the turnaround's coming, and they set it up.
I had you're going over my head. You're going to go over my head as a What Stage the Best. I've never used that. I want to go up to somebody. I want to tell like Craig to like cut out some of your takes and be like, what, you're going to go over my head?
You going over my head, Craig? I have more. Any other What Stage the Best for you?
I can't believe it's been 30 minutes. We haven't talked about the one-on-one game to open the movie.
Oh yeah.
Guys playing in a rain-slicked alley with a wooden backboard just for the love of the game. And then another pimp getting thrown out the window by Richard Belzer.
Yeah.
And he goes, tied up in a chair, goes through the hoop. And it's like these guys playing for $1 a dunk. It's fucking awesome.
It's really good. Good call. Belzer is a bad guy I had as What Stage the Best. That's what Friends Are For before it became the actual song. That's what Friends Are For. But as a kind of score for a movie, really works well. And then they dropped the Rod Stewart at the end, which kind of got overshadowed a few years later by the Dionne Warwick version. Comedies with a Heart. I like that Chuck's mom goes to a seance to yell at her dead husband. I thought it was just a really good touch. I like when Keaton gets mad in the barbershop. He's like, I wash my hands, my feet of you. And then he points to that guy. And he's like, trim that to the guy with the sideburns. And then the soundtrack, they have You Really Got Me by Van Halen, which is probably a top 3 Van Halen song. Jumpin' Jack Flash live version. Night Shift. Girls Know How by the great Al Jarreau. The Love Too Good to Last by the Pointer Sisters. Talk Talk. Got them in there. And Burt Bacharach.
I had one other What's Age the Best is I mentioned this before. This can both go into these two can go under one category, which is all the asides that get made in the movie. But everybody reacting to pictures of Charlotte. This picture doesn't do her justice. She's suffering from water buildup.
What does that even mean?
Yeah,
what's that? He said she had some disease too, right, or some sort of condition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like we could get into Charlotte, but like I also really love Lupe saying, "Don't be snobs. I used to be a pickle girl here once."
I'm looking up that Al Jarreau song. Yeah. This is just Scream's 1982, right? It's just the beginning. They don't make them like this anymore, CR.
No.
Al Jarreau is now. Unfortunately, he's in that We Are the World documentary, kind of hammered the whole time. But yeah. Okay. I hope that doesn't get the podcast shut down on YouTube because I played 20 seconds of that. Let's go to my last What's Age the Best. Ron Howard promoted this on SNL. And he went on with Raheem Abdul-Muhammad, which was Eddie Murphy's movie reviewer character. And Raheem asked, was there any black people in it? Ron Howard said no. And Raheem said, I didn't see it then. What was it about? And Ron Howard said, oh, well, it's the story about these two pimps. And Raheem says, it's a story about two pimps and was no brothers in it? I don't know whether to say thank you or punch you in the mouth. It just like brought the house down. It's very 80s. Ron Howard, when he was fully embracing the I'm going bald, but I'm still going to do the comb over with the mustache combo.
Ron Howard, incredible cameo in this movie as the sax player.
New category that you haven't been here for since Kyle Brandt thought of it during the Rudy episode. The Fortune 3 Clap Award for most gifable moment. It's got to be Love Brokers, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Either that or it would probably be that or the guy flying through the window.
Oh yeah, right, through the basket. Great Shot Gordo Award, the dead guy going through the rim, no question. The Den of Thieves Benihana Award for scene stealing location. If you're not going to go with the morgue, what was the name? Paradise Found?
Paradise Found.
It's like a Plato's Retreat kind of place. There, you got to look carefully, but there's a guy just floating on a raft, like kind of a fat older guy, just kind of lying on his stomach, but he's naked.
Well, it's like
why would anyone go in this pool?
They have a lot going on here intellectually. It's like a Jane and Tarzan themed indoor water park / sex club.
Yeah,
which sounds like,
should we open one? The
greatest convention of bacteria that I've ever conceived of. Like indoor water parks alone are already disease like fountains. To actually then add orgies into that is an astonishing like.
And this is during the beginning of like the HIV era too, where there's just bad stuff going around everywhere.
Terrible,
this is not the club you would have wanted to open. Yeah. Anyway, naked guys in the pool. The Kid Cudi Pursuit of Happiness Award, Best Needle Drop, has to be Jumpin' Jack Flash in the limo.
Yeah, although I really
watch out of the highway.
I love when like the entire credits gets a song like with Quarter Flash. It's just like let's let this ride.
Yeah, that's true. They do let that ride for 3 minutes. We'll give them co-winners. The Big Kahuna Burger Award, Best Use of Food and Drink. Vincent Schiavelli taking Chuck's tuna fish sandwich and smearing
yellow
it
mustard.
on the door. Yeah, I took the mustard off for you. The Butch's Girlfriend Award, weak link of the film. You want to go first?
Do you feel like it's Charlotte? Gina
I don't love the Charlotte character. I had her in What's Age the Worst. I think for me, I just don't understand why Belinda was a lady of the night.
Right.
I didn't feel like enough damage or.
So you wanted her to have like just a nagging.
It just seemed like she easily could have had a job, right?
Yeah.
She didn't have there was no drug problem.
Yeah, she
had a decent
sharp.
Apartment.
Maybe
she seemed pretty
very
sharp.
sex positive, you know?
Good people skills. I don't know. It never really added up. Whereas like in Trading Places with the Jamie Lee Curtis character, I was like, I could see it, you know?
Well, I mean, I think you could ask this question of several people in this film is like, why do you have this job?
Right. Why is Chuck in a morgue?
Chuck was like an investment banker who then decided to become a mortician, which is like,
he couldn't handle the pressure of investment banking, apparently.
Yeah. Like go be like a golf pro somewhere. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really understand why, like he was like, I have to work right next to Times Square handling dead bodies.
Yeah. It is a little weird. Yeah. The Belinda, whatever her arc was, you just try not to overthink that one. What's Age the Worst? The Hookers with a Heart of Gold theme. They don't have those anymore. Who was the last hooker with a heart of gold?
Well, you know, there's a movie coming out called Honora that Sean Baker made that's got that. It's basically like Pretty Woman, you know, but I'm excited for that. So we haven't had one of those in a while though.
Gotta flag it. It's a possible new category because, I'm always watching. I know you are too. We might be the only two that care, which is why it's not a category. But Shelley Long smoking cigarettes, just
not believable.
I just never bought in. And I think they were doing some strategic edits out because she was doing, I just never bought it. Billy going, get out of town, you two guys. Like he didn't see this building for 4 months. Was he just in his own world? And then here's my big what's age the worst. Billy as an idea guy. Here are the ideas he came up with in the movie. Eliminate garbage with paper, edible paper. Feed mayonnaise to the tuna. He claimed to come up with wash and dries, but admitted that it already existed. Love brokers. I guess he gets credit for that idea. And then microwavable clothing was his last one.
And also, essentially tries to come up with card counting.
Which already existed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm a little dubious on his idea guy thing. You have any other what's age the worst?
I think that, Charlotte's weight loss obsession has been, not obviated by, but is like much different now with Ozempic and everything like that. So
right. Oh yeah, she's just on Ozempic now.
Constantly working out, constantly and her eating like Malamars while they have sex and stuff is like, you don't see a lot of that anymore. I also thought, given New York's rental prices, that it's unlikely that you could afford to be engaged with someone that you're not living with. So Charlotte and Chuck have separate apartments. I'm just saying. You don't really see people having separate places and then getting married.
Ruffalo Hannah Rubinek Partridge Overacting Award. I had one for this. Did you have one?
I didn't actually. What's like? What? I think Schiavelli somewhat.
Winkler when he's trying to kill Keaton in the lawyer's office. I'm gonna kill you. You're gonna play tennis with God. He kind of goes for a little bit. Was there a better title for this movie?
I got one.
I wonder if we have the same one. What's yours?
Stiffs.
Oh, that's really good.
What's yours?
Love Brokers.
Yeah. Love Brokers would be, it's like, Love Brokers
then he gets to say it in the
business.
movie.
Yeah.
The Can You Dig It award for most memorable quote has to be that Barney Rubble, what an actor.
Yeah.
It's just height of comedy. Hey, the CR thinks Luke Wilson could have been Harrison Ford Hottest Take Award. You have one?
I think that without Keaton's chalkboard scene, you don't get Alec Baldwin saying always be closing in Glengarry Glen Ross.
Direct homage / ripoff?
Yeah. I think Pulitzer Prize winning playwright David Mamet, when he added that into the screenplay for Glengarry, was thinking about Billy Blaze.
Well, this movie forced me to make my Mount Rushmore for prostitute characters in movies.
Oh, great.
I knew you'd be excited. I don't know what we call it. Mount Sex Worker more, Mount Hooker more, Mount Prostitute more.
I like Mount Hookmore is good.
No, I think it's good. It's Mount Rushmore.
Oh, there he is from the Peanut Gallery.
Craig. So you can always count on him. Mount Rushmore. Vivian Ward in Pretty Women. Julia Roberts. Lana from Risky Business, Rebecca De Mornay. Ophelia from Trading Places.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Lee Curtis. And last but not least, Alabama.
I was hoping you were going to say
from
Alabama.
True Romance.
Yeah.
And she might even be the Michael Jordan of this category. And that leads me to my hottest take. We're not doing well enough with sex worker characters anymore. I don't have anybody in that pantheon from the last 31 years. Let's step it up. What are we doing, guys?
I'll take it a step further, is that the spectrum of humanity that you get when they make the pitch to all the women, there's a girl who looks like Pat Benatar, you got Lupe, you got Drew Barrymore's mother is one of the
Jane
women.
Barrymore.
Yeah, like there's so many different like ladies, and like we're just like we've really like lost something, you know?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Casting what ifs. I don't know if this is, I'm not positive I believe this, but that Kurt Russell and Mickey Rourke audition for Billy Blaze. I can't imagine this.
I certainly
Keaton
could buy Kurt Russell doing that, because Kurt Russell kind of he does a little bit of Billy in Jack from Big Trouble in Little China, like a couple years later. And it's like, he has that vibe. Mickey Rourke would have been really different. That would have been like Sean Penn doing that role.
I don't see it at all. One of the girls, you mentioned Jade Barrymore, one of the other girls was Ola Ray, who ended up playing Michael Jackson's date in the Thriller video and became super duper famous. Now, if that Thriller video happens now, with the amount of attention it got, she's probably on social media all of a sudden with 10 million Instagram. But back then it was like, oh, I'm in the Thriller video, and then nothing happens. The Costner as Frat Boy #1 award for most unexpected A-lister cameo, a brand new category here in the Rewatchables. We should have had it a long time ago. My apologies. We're not perfect.
We didn't.
Kevin Costner
we didn't
wins.
Know. Yeah.
No, he didn't know. And just in general, the early cameos of people in movies,
this would have gone
we
to
always
Brad Pitt in No Way Out. Like,
right.
Yeah.
I don't know what we were doing. Look, we're 354 movies in. We're still trying to get better.
Yeah.
But new category. Are you happy with the Costner as Frat Boy #1 award, or just calling it the Frat Boy #1 award?
Yeah, let's call it Frat Boy #1.
What do you think, Craig?
Well, we got to get the word cameo in there, right? Otherwise, people aren't going to notice.
Yeah, it's the Frat Boy #1 award for most unexpected A-lister cameo. I guess Costner does need to be in that.
Yeah, it's easy to remember.
Yeah, I will work at the title. Hey, the Clint Howard Award for the director loves this guy. Goes to Clint Howard. This is great. People just winning their own awards.
This is like Joe Pants being in the movie kind of thing.
Best That Guy Award, Vincent Schiavelli, not eligible. Joe Spinell as
oh my God, dude.
the leader of Paradise Found, also not eligible because I feel like he's Joe Spinell. Fortunately, Rick the Dick from Bachelor Party is here as the guy working the desk at Paradise Found. I don't know if you noticed. Goes on to Bachelor Party having one of the most important scenes in the movie.
I had one other, which is one of the basketball players in the opening scene is Grand L. Bush, who you will remember from Die Hard several years later. He's the one who's like, I was in junior high, dickhead.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
I was wondering who that. I forgot to look that up. That's a great one. I was in junior high, dickhead. Deion Waiters award has to be Carbone's nephew.
The only other one I had was Shannon Doherty. R.I.P.
Oh, wow.
She's the Girl
maybe
Scout.
The two basketball players.
Yeah.
All right. Recasting couch director or city. We're going to concentrate on Belinda. I really like Shelley Long. I am a Shelley Long supporter and fan. I'm not positive this was the right movie for her. And I was trying to think. I even went through like 3 years of the early 80s box office mojo titles, trying to see if anyone sparked a possibility for who would have been better. I mean, the answer probably is Jamie Lee Curtis, but then she's in. I have two, but do you have one for
I
her?
have two, and I worry that I'm a little early on both.
Okay,
I think that it's Ellen Barkin or Linda Fiorentino.
Oh, interesting. Too early on Linda Fiorentino.
Barkin? She's in Diner already.
She's in Diner. Yeah, I don't think it's anybody who actually could have been in the movie in 1982, but if it's like 5, 6, because my two were Demi Moore, like 7 years later, late 80s Demi Moore, like 1989 Demi Moore. But my favorite, we have to build a time machine and then transport her from the future. But Emma Stone, 2023 Emma Stone, we just pull her back to 82. This is like a great Emma Stone part, right? It's like perfect. She's kind of played versions of this part anyway. So Tony Romo, Chris Collinsworth, or somebody else for the director's commentary.
Somebody else? What do you think? It would be DB.
Oh, you got DB again? What do you have?
I see you, Mr. Bill. After years of hard work coming up with the idea for Wash and Dry, card counting at the blackjack table, you've arrived on the biggest stage, acting as a love broker. I also think now my DB is sort of morphing into Mark Jackson.
I remember the first time I did DB, and there was 90% fear in your eyes, and then 10%, I'm so excited this door has been opened. And now you're crafting DB monologues. Mine is more simpler, and maybe because it's football season starting this week.
Sure.
They're going to get caught, Jim. This is too risky. Somebody's going to find out, Jim.
Clint Howard's in the freezer, Jim.
They're just running these people in and out, Jim. Somebody's going to find them. Half-assed research, not a lot. Keaton would blast 10th Avenue Freeze Out to get into the character of Billy Blaze, which I thought was funny. This hurt. 2019 interview with Hoda and Kathy Lee, they asked him who his most annoying co-star was, and Henry Winkler admitted it was Shelley Long. One of the reasons he gave was that she would stand in a frame wrong to tower over him because they weren't the same height.
So did she also have a bad rep on Cheers too?
Again, one of my favorites. I don't want to speak badly, but I don't know if a lot of tears were shed when she left the show.
Okay.
Was my feeling. Bill is shown driving a 1981 Stutz IV Port.
There's only like 500 of those, right?
In 50.
Oh my God.
They were priced at $84,500 back in the day. Custom handmade cars built on the Buick LeSabre, Pontiac, Bonneville, or Oldsmobile 88 Royal platform. They are now worth about $300,000.
Yeah.
Apex Mountain. Keaton, no. Although this is his funniest performance in a movie.
It's not Apex Mountain, but he definitely goes up like a few thousand feet in the first movie he's in. He's just scaling the walls.
Yeah. You can't believe how high he climbed up the mountain. You're like, holy shit, man. You've never done even like a mountain in New Hampshire before? You're climbing Everest? Winkler, no. Shelley Long, no, but we're getting close. Like second year Cheers combined with Irreconcilable Differences coming out. It felt like she was going to be like an A+ actress, A+ lister. Ron Howard, no. Barney Rubble, no.
No.
Idea Men?
You know, it's the time. It's like this is the 80s, early 80s New York. The streets were paved with gold. Yeah,
out there.
that's all out there. You just got to grab it.
Prostitute comedies.
No, I mean, it's
Risky Business.
Risky Business. Although I think this is funnier than Risky Business.
Risky Business is more successful.
Yeah.
I do think you're right that it's funnier, though. What do you have? Morgues?
I was going to say Morticians, and I wasn't sure if it was this or 6 Feet Under.
6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
Jumpin' Jack Flash?
No.
Okay.
It's not even Apex Mountain for That's What Friends Are For.
No. This is the easiest Cruiser Hanks we've ever had. It's so clearly Hanks. I also really would have enjoyed watching like 1988 Tom Cruise trying to be Billy Blaze Jowski. Be like, I need to do a comedy and just really going for it.
Can you imagine?
But Hanks, definitely. Racehorse, rock band, wrestler, fantasy team names.
I have Blazeland USA.
Yeah, or Billy's Blazes, something with Billy Blaze. Okay, Pickin' Nits.
Yeah.
So none of our girls are addicted to drugs or anything bad in any way.
Clean living.
It's a nit.
Although, also, can I ask? This is a little bit of an unanswerable question, but I just have to ask because you just brought it up. Billy's just coked out of his mind the entire time, right?
I had that in Unanswerables. It feels like he's coked up to the gills in every single scene.
Yeah.
It makes more sense. It's like when whoever told us that Vincent Hanna was on cocaine and Heat, and it was like, oh, I should have guessed it.
Maybe that we should have the Vincent Hanna Award for a drug addiction explains this entire character, or an unmentioned drug addiction explains this entire character.
Yeah, that's good. Nobody ever dies in this morgue.
So this is the biggest.
We're in Times Square.
It's New York City, and they're like the night shift. You can just get some reading done, and it's like that's when all the bodies would be piling up, man. It's 1982 in New York.
Yeah, and every other New York movie at the time, people are just dying left and right. There's vigilante movies, everything's going on. So they get caught, and then they just get their jobs back because the city finds it too embarrassing.
It would be a political
embarrassing.
I know. It's a very convoluted.
That is definitely a what. The girlfriend just disappears for the second half of the movie. Chuck's girlfriend, no questions asked from her. That relationship just goes out the window, which makes. You wonder, did we need those extra 2 scenes with the girlfriend if we were just going to dump her halfway through the movie? It would have been an easy cut.
It is funny the Thanksgiving scene is funny, and like getting all of when Charlotte's mother almost has a heart attack at court is pretty cracks me up a lot.
Yeah. I maybe would have stayed at the Christmas party with the girls longer because I think that's getting pretty rowdy. bunch of ladies who don't have to work that night, having drinks, handing gifts. I just think some crazy stuff's happening.
My last nitpick was basically, does Chuck's business plan make any money for him and Billy? I mean, Billy's buying himself like this like unique one of a kind car. You know, they're rolling in it by just taking 10%. They have a huge amount of overhead, gas costs to get the girls to the dates and stuff. Like, where's this money coming from? Well, they're giving it all back to their workers, which I think is great, but still.
10%, maybe they could have gone for 15.
I think
15, maybe
Bill
even 20.
Definitely wanted that. Yeah.
Would have been good. Maybe they boosted the rates up, but it leads to the other nitpick of how long were they doing this? Because,
well, I think a month. Because it's like Thanksgiving is when he gets Belinda out of jail. I think soon after that they start Love Brokers,
but then they get caught the day after Christmas Day.
Yeah, so I think
4 weeks.
About a month.
I just don't think they made enough money to buy like the car and all that.
I know.
Watches and all that stuff.
How were they operating without any muscle? Like they still didn't have anybody to be.
Well, that's the next nitpick.
Yeah,
Franklin's murdered. Yeah, Franklin gets killed. All of their girls are now doing jobs for somebody else, and it takes them 5 weeks to figure out like what's happening here.
Yeah, well, there were no phones back then. You know, there were no cell phones.
Yes, it feels like we could have solved that in 24 hours. And then my last one. So Billy's a big money pimp driving this nice car, and things fall through. And then he's a towel boy at this weird sex place. That's his next job. He could have been like a manager. Like, he's just back to the bottom.
Also, why was he like, well, I guess I'm just going to continue in glorified sex work? Like, well, how did you become a mortician in the first place? Were there any certifications involved with that? Like,
don't understand that at all. Sequel, prequel, prestige TV, all black cast, or untouchable.
Can I go here? Because I have $1 million idea.
Okay.
We have the two leads of this movie are still alive and kicking, still working. Why are we not doing Chuck is living in a retirement community in Florida? He's got
Billy Blaze shows up.
And Billy shows up. And what do all these old people, all these old widowers want? Just a little bit of companionship. So it's basically Night Shift meets Cocoon. Yeah. Golden Girls.
Night Shift meets Cocoon at what are those places called?
Like the villages. Yeah.
The retirement home. Now it's like assisted living.
Yeah. We can make them a little more. Everybody's still playing pickleball. You know, like they're still ambulatory.
So it's called Night Shift 2 Assisted Living.
Assisted humping.
What a great idea, CR. It's better than my idea, which was just to make it untouchable. Is this movie better with Wayne Jenkins, Danny Trejo, Sam Jackson, JT Walsh, Byron Mayo, Harling Mays, evil laughing Ramon Raymond, or Philip Baker Hall?
I think it's Byron Mayo.
I had Byron with multiple exclamation points. Belinda!
Lupe!
Hey, Lupe! I loved your speech.
Your poem was beautiful. Why don't we get into one of these freezer drawers?
Yeah, I was thinking drawer number 12.
Bring Sharon.
Just one Oscar. Who gets it?
Keaton.
Probably unanswerable questions. We did Is Billy Blaze on massive amounts of cocaine the whole time? That might even be answerable because 1982 was almost the eye of the needle of the cocaine storm of the 80s. Yeah. If you weren't on cocaine in 1982, it was suspicious.
You were working nights in 1982 right off of Times Square, but you're just completely clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Franklin and Richard Belzer's character, how they shot at a couple cops. What are we thinking for jail time for them?
Oh, those guys are away for like at least 2 decades, 15 years.
Oh, okay. So they're gone. Yeah. So there's a void. I mean, couldn't they quietly put that business back together? They had all the pieces. Franklin's gone. The 2 guys are gone. You have the girls.
There are only 3 other pimps in New York City in 1982.
By the way, here this isn't unanswerable, but the other way this movie could have ended, they could have brought Belinda into the business because she was smart, right? Good with people, and she becomes the third person. They bring the business back, but she's now running
I think the unexplored part of this movie is that Belinda wants to keep doing this.
Right. Loves her job.
I've watched this movie like several times since I found out we were doing this. Whose dog is that? Why is there just an attack dog running through the halls of the apartment?
At one point, there's one scene where there's just an Asian guy, like an Asian neighbor, just standing in the doorway, and the dog runs by him. And I have no idea why the neighbor's like, why he's there. He doesn't have a speaking line or anything. I had one more unanswerable question because they're just cranking out porn in New York.
Oh, yeah.
In the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. And when they couldn't find somebody, they go get a prostitute and bring them in. Like, was Belinda in any porn, or was Lupe maybe popped in on a couple like old Jamie Gillis, like early 80s? Jamie's like, I'll just go outside in Times Square and grab somebody. I feel like porn could have been a bigger part. If the TV series of Night Shift, there's definitely a porn
It seems
episode.
like for Z1Neo that's where Bill is going. Bill is ahead of the game. He's like, VHS.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think porn VHS coming, he's basically competing with Jack Horner on the straight to video scene. That's the next thing for him. I don't know why he didn't think of that right away. I had that, or he gets busted for cocaine distribution. I had Chuck becomes Gordon Gekko's right-hand financial guy is murdered after Blue Steel goes south. I don't know what happens to Belinda. What's your double feature choice?
I'll go Risky Business.
I had that as well. There you go. What piece of memorabilia would you want from this movie?
I really like Chuck's satin jacket Bill's satin jacket that he's wearing when he first walks in. I also would love the tape recorder. I'm an ideas man. Why do I have a tape recorder? I like taping things. The tape recorder
would be really cool to throw in an office.
Can you imagine if we just had the Bill Blaze tapes and we released that as a podcast, as a limited series?
People would be like, what is this? I had Keaton's trademark satin bomber jacket because he's talked about it. And he says he still has it. I try to keep a little something for me and also to hand down to kids and grandkids. And that's one of the few things from that movie that I hung on to.
Amazing.
So that's in like Michael Keaton's attic. Send it here. Coach Finstock Award for Best Life Lesson. I don't know. Don't start a prostitution business in a morgue. What's our life lessons?
Or like, always look for opportunities. You know what I mean? You never know where they're going to come, what shape they're going to come in.
How about no bad ideas in a brainstorm?
That's right.
Or David Jacoby, one of the great ones. And then who won the movie? Clearly Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
All right, hold on to your chair. His Purple Rain review was not beloved. Producer Craig is back. He's shaking off the heat. Where'd you stand on Night Shift?
Really liked it.
Oh.
Very charming, enjoyable, incredibly watchable movie. It doesn't have a ton of lulls. Nice amount of humor and heart. 3 very likable characters, I thought. Keaton, I got to be honest. When the movie starts, I was like, uh-oh. This is like one of those bad SNL movies, and it's going to be 100 minutes of Keaton sprinting. But they do a good job. They pull back in the right moments with Keaton, so you don't get sick of him.
Yeah.
Keaton's good. Keaton has the unique ability to kind of be incredibly awkward and annoying, but also lovable and a little pathetic in this movie. It actually made me think that he could have been Michael Keaton.
Oh, that's a old
great
for it,
call.
But it's a good the lineage from Billy Blaze to Michael Scott is interesting.
Yes,
that's really interesting to think of the Michael Keaton TV angle because he was trying to do TV for years and they couldn't find the right role for him. But I do think like it's kind of impossible that in the early 80s they couldn't have found a show that he couldn't have been on. Like Michael J. Fox, they found a show. Hanks had Bosom Buddies. And he easily could have just been in Bosom Buddies.
Yeah,
that's a fun angle.
The lovable boss. Yeah, I think Keaton would have totally nailed that. I got to say, I love Shelley Long. I think Irreconcilable Differences is an amazing movie. And I think like the first 20, 30 minutes of that movie, she is like incredible in. I thought she was amazing in this. I wish they gave her more room to be funny in this.
Yeah.
Because the movie starts and in that first scene,
she's
in the morgue,
really funny in that first scene.
And she's like, oh, an Egg McMuffin and a dead guy. Great. Like, he's my Avon lady. Like, she was really good in that. And
that's, I think, the scripted part. And then I think when Keaton comes in, they're like, oh, hell. Like, we just got to let this guy cook.
Yeah. Because I never really watched Cheers. Like the 90s sitcoms were my wheelhouse. I watched all of those, but I didn't really watch Cheers at all. So I didn't have a super strong relationship with her. But I have like a crush on her. I think she's fantastic. I want to watch more Shelley Long stuff. Maybe I should go back and watch Cheers.
Craig, bang out the first 2 Cheers seasons.
The first
some of the best TV of all time.
I've seen episodes
I don't
here
like
and
the
there.
old guy, but she's Her and Ted Danson. Ted Danson was the other one on that show. It was one of the best TV show performances I think we've had.
I love Charlotte's parents. I'm a big fan of like horrified, rigid Midwestern parents.
Right.
Like I think that's just like the mom like passed out in the car because she's so exhausted.
What's the line he has for the dad where he's like, you know, like, do you wish you drank? Like,
right. Not at all. Have you seen The Money Pit, Craig?
No.
It's a terrifying film if you're thinking about buying a house.
That's a Hank Shelley Long movie that she's really good in. How did you end up seeing Irreconcilable Differences? Just out of curiosity.
I watched it. Me and Mags watched it because it was a Ringer Films thing. We were researching something for Ringer Films and we couldn't find Irreconcilable Differences online. And
it's on YouTube.
Sean had a DVD, so he brought it in for us.
Yeah.
Wow. Classic Sean. Yeah, it's on YouTube. We've circled that one for Rewatchables for a while. It's going to be one of the worst months in Rewatchables history when it's Eddie and the Cruisers and the Irreconcilable Differences, and we just do
we need to make
obscure 80s movies.
All movies that are barely available to watch.
Yeah. Four movies you can't even find, much less you probably
literally
haven't heard of.
Unwatchable.
Yeah. Well, we did it for Pump Up the Volume. We brought it back.
Yeah.
Right. So, Craig, are you disappointed looking back now that Michael Keaton didn't do more comedies in the 80s?
Yeah, he's a guy I don't have a strong relationship with either. I mean, I liked Beetlejuice growing up. The Batman thing, I was too young for that. So Keaton has always been this guy that to be honest, like the biggest Keaton role for me is Birdman. And I know it was like the big comeback for him, but I think for a lot of people my age, we didn't really know that. It was just like this guy who seemed like a fringe A-lister who never quite made it. And Birdman was his moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. There's a couple Robin Williams movies from that mid 80s to early 90s range that I feel like if you put Michael Keaton in,
yeah, like he could have maybe done Good Morning Vietnam.
I think he absolutely could have done Good Morning Vietnam. I think he could have done Dead Poets Society. There's a few of them. I think he could have been in World According to Garp. Yeah, because he could strip it back or be funny depending on what the thing was. But he had an awesome career. Anyway, that's Night Shift. You can watch this on the Ringer Movies YouTube channel, produced by Craig Horlbeck. As always, CR. You're an ideas man, and it was great to see you.
Great to see you, bud.
Yeah, see you next week.